In the previous video, I was building a PC that is going to be sort of like a lounge PC with, a remote, something like an Xbox controller, wireless keyboard and mouse, something that you can just use to relax and chill, because I don't like playing games on my work PC, which is this one. And I've been trying new things, Steam streaming within PCs within the house, stuff like that. And all of that stuff works kind of well. But at the end of the day, you kind of just want to build a PC, right? And in this case, it has to be sort of like a console PC. Now, I do have a PlayStation 5 and I've enjoyed playing with it lately. It's very relaxing. And so I want to do the same thing with the Steam games that I have in my Steam library, because you have a ton of games that you never get to, and a lot of those are controller friendly and even better with a controller. And so I am building a PC. The previous video I bought some of the components, the base components, the office PC, so to say, that I streamed with, from this computer to the lounge PC, which is the office PC. And now I'm looking at adding a graphics card to it. That's the whole point of this video. And I'm kind of considering a few things, and one of those is, of course, the GTX 1080 Ti, and another is the Arc A750. Now, if I can put it this way, I want to do a few of these videos. These are the entry-level considerations, right? So these are the lowest considerations that I'm making, and this is the first tier of the graphics card budget. Of course, these are going to be second-hand cards. It's a second-hand PC. It has some new parts, but it's a second-hand gaming PC that is used as a console-like experience. And so the reality is I'm probably not going to go with these, but they are being considered. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons of going with a NVIDIA card versus an Intel card when you're talking about age, right? Because these are older cards. The GTX 1080 is a legendary card, especially the Ti, because it's a strong card for the price now, and it was a strong contender even at launch. The A750 from the Arc from Intel is also a relatively strong card, but it's not as performant as the 1080 Ti, but it does have some advantage, and that advantage is entry-level ray tracing, which the 1080 Ti has none of that, which also means you can't play all games now, because something like the newest Doom game, for instance, requires at least an entry point of ray tracing. Now, the 1080 Ti has an advantage in that it has 11 gigs of VRAM, of course, which the Arc A750 only has 8 gigs of VRAM. And so there's a lot to consider, right? Because on the one hand, you're going with a bit more raw power, but on the other hand, the A750 is also a lot newer. The VRAM limitation is a big problem, though. With those points made, let's take a look at how they perform. This is God of War Ragnarok. They're performing quite similarly. The 1080 Ti is performing a bit better, but again, consider that with the A750 you'll have the option of some upscaling. Now with the 1080 Ti as well, but it's going to be, it doesn't actually have hardware support for that. The A750 has built-in hardware support for upscaling for XeSS. Performance-wise, both of these are fine. I mean, this game isn't the most demanding. Both of these are relatively good performances. This is at medium settings 1080p. I would probably play at 1440p 2K, maybe also at medium. So I would want to get around 60 FPS, because that's what the TV's refresh rate is. It's just a standard TV, and so getting 60 FPS is sort of the aim for everything that I'm going to play, and this is something that I will play. Hitman 3, not something that I'll play on this PC, but I have played it on this PC. Both are getting good results, quite close. The 1080 Ti is getting around 100 FPS, 99 FPS, and the A750 is getting around the same, really, 95 to 100 FPS. And both are relatively good results. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I won't be playing this, but both are more than acceptable results. Cyberpunk, I will probably be playing, and we are looking at 60 FPS versus round about 60 FPS. And so these cards are very similar in performance. I do know that sometimes the A750 can perform better in Cyberpunk, especially because it does have ray tracing support. Another thing to consider, of course, is the power draw. The 1080 Ti is going to draw a lot more power than the A750 in most scenarios. But again, both of these are what I would consider acceptable performances. Now, this is 1080p high. I would want to play at 1440p, so I would probably get around 50 FPS, which is maybe a little bit low. Dying Light 2, something that I would want to play medium 1080p, and we are looking at about 85 FPS on the 1080 Ti, with an average of 90, compared to 70s, 79 average on the A750. And if you look at the side by side, the frame times are very different. It's a lot smoother on the 1080 Ti, which is interesting. It even looks laggy on the Arc card, and that's of course the thing with Arc is even now the driver support just isn't quite as good as you're gonna get with Nvidia. But again, both are acceptable frame rates, although the 1080 Ti is doing substantially better. F1, not going to look at, not going to play that. I would want to play Spider-Man 2, but I think Spider-Man 1 is a good, Spider-Man 1 Remastered is a good entry point into that world of style of game. And both are doing relatively good. This is running at high 1080p. We're looking at about 81 FPS average on the 1080 Ti and 70 FPS average on the A750. So both are relatively good results. Forza Horizon 5, something that I would probably play. I'd probably play Need for Speed, but this is, similar. 108 average on the 1080 Ti, 98 average on the A750. So again, both are decent performances. Okay, here are my thoughts on these cards. Both are actually relatively good now. The pros and cons, I think I would probably... man, this is such a tough decision because you do want to get the extra VRAM, but you also want some ray tracing support so you can at least play modern games. But then even if you do play modern games, the A750 is not going to play them well anyway. Like Stalker 2, it's going to get like 50 FPS on medium. So it's not like... well, not Stalker, because I don't think that needs ray tracing, but you get what I mean. Let's say Doom or something else that needs ray tracing, like Indiana Jones or something. If the A750 had like 10 gigs of VRAM, this would be a very different comparison. But unfortunately, it does only have 8, and that just makes this a bit more difficult. It makes it difficult to recommend. Again, if you look at the frame times, the 1080 Ti just seems smoother most of the time, and I think for that reason, I would probably take a 1080 Ti above a A750, because most of the games that I have in my Steam library, I've got like 1,000 games, but most of them are older games. I don't really buy AAA games. I play a few AA games, and mostly indies, but I think the 1080 Ti would have enough power for, in this case, 1080p gaming. And in my case, 1440p it would probably fall a bit short, so I'm probably not going to go for either of these cards. But I would still, I would still be interested in, hearing what your thoughts are on these. Are these good entry-level cards to a home theater HDPC sort of setup, or is it just, just a bridge too far for these cards, just a year too much? Are these just outdated now and not really worth picking up? Because in the case of the 1080 Ti, of course, that is true because it's just so old, but it still performs relatively well. And if you look at pricing, both of these cards fall around 3,500 Rand secondhand, which is about like $270, right? That's what these would go for in South Africa, which is where I am. And so it's interesting that, for that money you could pick up something like this, because you could build a PC for under 10,000 Rand with those specs, which is about the same price as a second-hand PlayStation 5. And I would say in the case of the A750, it's going to be similar to what a PS5 would be, probably maybe a 3060, but performance-wise you can really match that. And there are different games than a PS5. But I'm getting away from the topic. I'm probably not going to go for either of these, but it's been an interesting video to see, to compare them and see how they both do. And honestly, I'm quite impressed by both of them. I think they both have done quite well in this video. This video is a good representation of what you can expect at 1080p, but I think these cards are just slightly less than what I need. So next up, I'll be looking at some different ones, maybe something from AMD, maybe a 2080 Ti, because you could get that for like $350 here in South Africa, maybe even 300 if you really shop. Maybe an Arc B580, right? Or maybe an RX 6700 or something like that. Just slightly more modern cards. But yeah, this has surprised me. What do you think? Do you think any of these cards are worth getting, or is it just, like I said, is it just the age of these cards have come and gone? Yeah, let me know what you think. Comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.